All right, we'll see if we can poke one in at 200 yards here with the Maxim 50. Just under it. Guys, welcome back. This is Eric here with Iraq Veteran 8888. Today, we are going to be talking about the SilencerCo Maxim 50. And guys, I'm just going to come out and say right now, when it comes to this gun, we have spent a heck of a lot of time with this muzzle loader trying to figure out exactly what is what in terms of accuracy, consistency, what we can dial out of it, what we can get out of it, performance. We've done some hunting with it, which is great. We've already gotten, one deer kill on the opening day of muzzleloader season, which we'll show you here in a moment. Guys, this thing is great, but if you're considering purchasing one of these muzzle loaders, I would strongly recommend some of you send this video around to somebody you know that might be on the fence so they can watch this video, because we've learned a lot of crucial things about this muzzle loader that I think are important and that need to be shared. So what is the Maxim 50? It's basically you could call it suppressed, but it's considered a moderator. You see this high volume, looks awfully a lot like a suppressor, but it's considered a moderator. It is permanently attached to the barrel. And since the Maxim 50 is a muzzle loader and not a firearm, it doesn't fall within the type of rules that firearms fall into. Okay, now, initially they were saying, hey, this is a 50-state legal thing. It can ship straight to your front door. There is no NFA paperwork on this particular muzzle loader here. Okay, the moderator is permanently attached to the muzzle loader. It cannot be removed, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the things involved with that here in a second. But it starts out as a Traditions inline, so SilencerCo does not make the actual muzzle loader itself. It's a Traditions muzzle loader with their moderator permanently attached, and it's sold as like an entire package. You get like a case and a whole bunch of neat stuff with it, and a bunch of basically a complement of tools and accessories to help you load and shoot the gun itself. It is a 50 caliber. Right now they're only available in 50 caliber. So there's some data points about the gun that I want to share that I think are important. One being, let's talk about projectiles. So it has a 1 in 28 inch twist, I believe. You might have to fact check me on that. I'm pretty sure it's a 1 in 28. I'm going off the top of my head here. But it has a relatively fast twist barrel, so it can stabilize quite a few projectiles of various sizes. But on the projectiles, one thing you want to consider, you cannot use a discarding sabot in this particular gun, because you have to use a special tube that fits down the front of the moderator in order to pour the powder and load the ball down the muzzle from the front end. You have to be able to clear the baffles without getting your powder all stuck in the baffles and stuff. So because the fact that the projectile is passing back through the baffles on the way out when the gun is fired, you can't have a discarding sabot or paper wad or anything that can get stuck on the inside of the moderator, because remember, you cannot remove it for cleaning. So the projectile you use has to be a non-discarding sabot type arrangement. Whether it's a Lee reel projectile, which means rifle engrave at loading, I believe, reel. It's basically a cast bullet mold you can order. You can order a 50 caliber reel mold, and you can use that in this if you wish. Or what I'm using today are these Federal bore-locked 350 grain projectiles. And now the way these work, this is a lead version. They also make this in a copper. The way this projectile works, and we're kind of going off on a separate tangent, but it's something I want to mention. You notice that the base will just kind of pull off. So you're thinking, well, bullcrap, Eric, that is discarding. Well, it's not, because what happens when you seat this thing and the rifle's discharged, the gases expand and push this little sabot out really, really tight against the barrel, almost like old school artillery rounds would do. They would load in the breech, real easy, and that would leave room for fouling and other things like that, so that when the gun fires, it expands and grabs and gets on downrange. So it's kind of a cool bullet for this particular purpose, and this is actually the bullet that SilencerCo recommends in this particular muzzleloader. So bullets, you're going to be a little bit limited. You can't use a discarding sabot, which some people might not like, okay? So that's just one thing to consider. Another thing is powder choice. With this particular gun, SilencerCo recommends the Blackhorn 209, and I have to say, I'm not a fan of that powder. I bought some of it and I've tried it, And this particular gun, loose powder, in my opinion, just doesn't provide quite the consistency that you get out of pellets. Now, you got a couple of different options for powder, but what I've found it likes is the IMR White Hots. All right, and the White Hots are a preformed pellet, and you can see it's literally just a little like glob of powder made into like a little pellet. 2 of these yields you 100 grains, okay? And that 100 grains is the charge that they recommend on this particular muzzleloader. So stick with 100 grains. I have tried the Pyrodex 50/50, which is basically a 50 grain pellet. So 2 of these pellets gives you 100 grains on the Pyrodex, and then 2 of the White Hots. I found that the pellets not only load easier when you're dealing with the tube and everything like that, but they also give a little bit more consistent velocities. One thing that we found in our initial accuracy testing and velocity testing, with a good clean barrel, when you're starting out with a nice smooth ultra shiny barrel, our first 6 shots yielded an average velocity with the White Hots of 1448, and that's with the 350 grain Federal bore lock bullet, and that's giving us 1,630 foot-pounds of energy. All right, that's the same exact bullet that our buddy was able to harvest a doe with the other day. I took my buddy Chad out, and he was able to draw first blood with the Maxim here, and it did a great job of providing a very humane kill on that doe. I mean, she was instantly down. It was very, very humane. 1,630 foot-pounds of energy is definitely no joke. I mean, that's a lot of energy going down range. So powder, you can use loose powder if you want, but I strongly recommend sticking with the pelletized styles of powder. They're a little bit easier to handle in the field in an inline, and in my opinion, they give a little bit better velocities. Now, with the Pyrodex, we found that our 50-yard groups were excellent with the Pyrodex, whereby our 50-yard groups of the White Hots, we did get 1 flyer, and then we stacked 4 into a very nice little cluster there. 100-yard accuracy with both powders and this bullet was a little bit sporadic. We were seeing that, you know, maybe pipe plate size accuracy, which for a lot of folks is really not that good, you know, at all. So you're talking, you know, probably good enough to put a kill on a deer or whatever like that, but you're not talking like shooting Coke cans at 100 yards with this rifle. It's just not going to do it, okay? I mean, maybe it will. The thing to consider with this type of gun, muzzle loaders tend to be very finicky. Guys, they have to be kept very, very clean. You have to keep these things clean in between shots. What we were experiencing with this particular muzzle loader is that we were getting a lot of buildup of crud and black powder fouling on the actual breech face of the gun, and it was causing the lockup, you know, not to want to lock up all the way. And this striker mechanism will not cock all the way unless you got a good tight lockup. Now, when I go to unlock it, this lever here breaches the action. It automatically decocks the striker mechanism. If this bore and everything is not kept extraordinarily clean, you will see loss of velocity and loss of accuracy. One thing we noticed, as the gun got really fouled in with the Pyrodex, we actually experienced a slight loss in velocity. Our average velocity with the Pyrodex was 1339 with a standard deviation of 79 feet per second, which is a pretty big spread of deviation there. That yields 1,394 foot-pounds of energy. But we got the widest amount of spread of velocities out of the Pyrodex than the White Hots. That's just our experience. Now guys, we're just running this one projectile. There's tons of projectiles on the market. So there's a lot of different things that you can do to experiment. We shot power balls, the power ball bullets or power belt bullets out of this particular gun, and because it is a discarding sabot, we found that when we rinsed this thing out with water to clean it, we were getting tons of those little green belts dropping out of the front of the moderator on the floor, and that's not good for accuracy, and it's not good for the suppressor, because the moderator. The last thing you want to do is fill that moderator up full of plastic particles and things like that, and that's why they don't recommend a discarding sabot. The reason I'm spending so much time talking about this stuff is because muzzle loaders do tend to be pretty finicky, and I don't want somebody to buy a gun like this and have a negative experience with it. I want them to make sure that if they follow some of these guidelines I'm giving them, that they'll have a very pleasant experience and hopefully not have a ton of issues. Now, another thing, this moderator will get full of powder residue and crud and things like that. It's just the nature of the beast. Well, what do a lot of people tend to want to do when I'm going to try to demonstrate. So I just shot the gun, okay? All right, take a patch. All right, just scrape this thing on the bench here a little bit, just to clean the front of that 209 off there, that inline plug. We're going to clean the end of it off. All right, we've got a vent pick right here, or a nipple pick. All right, we're going to take our pick and we're just going to make sure that that's open. That's very important. Make sure that you're getting good fire there. You don't want to have anything obscuring the hole in this breech plug, okay? You want to make sure that you're applying a fairly liberal amount of grease to the plug. Not a ton, maybe about that much, okay? Maybe just a tiny dab on the O-ring, all right? You want to clean in between shots for accuracy. Now, like in a hunting situation, guys, you are not going to have time to load this gun because the loading procedure for this gun is very specific and it's a little bit more time consuming than a standard muzzle loader. A lot of guys are used to using like speed loaders. I know you've seen them where you shoot the gun and then basically you immediately pour the new charging bullet down, run the starter, run the rod, breech are open, replace your 209. This is a 209 fired system, so it uses basically a shotgun primer, and you're ready to shoot again. Simply take the gun off safe, recock the mechanism, bam, you're ready to shoot. And with some practice, you can reload a 209 inline muzzle loader pretty dang quick. But the Achilles heel to this system, and one thing I want to share in terms of the loading procedure, is this tube slows you down a lot. And remember, this gun does not have a provision to carry your ramrod. All right, so it's standard inline, you're going to have the ramrod right there on the gun. With this gun, if you're going to try to get a second shot off in the field while you're out deer hunting, you got to carry this tube, you got to carry this bullet starter, and you got to carry this, and you got to carry the gun. So imagine having to reload this thing. The reloading procedure for this gun, in terms of what SilencerCo mentions in the manual, I'll say this. All right, I'm going back to the fact that that powder in the moderator kind of gumming up and everything. So you start to get powder residue in the moderator. And what I was going to mention, I got off track there. When you go to put the rifle, you know, butt down to the ground to reload it like you would a standard 209, what happens? All right, you go to shake it, you go to put this down in there or whatever to go ahead and load the gun. Well, that powder residue will fall through the back of the moderator, down the barrel, and you could get as much as 1/8 of an inch of powder residue on the face of this breech plug. And then what are you doing? You're loading a powder charge over the top and a bullet. All right, well, what happens when you put your primer in there? Fizzle pop, or fizzle nothing. Or a primer pops and no fire, gun doesn't go off. Bambi goes, what the heck? He's gone. There you go. So I would make one minor revision to their loading procedure. Put the loading tube in the end of the moderator before you invert the gun to the butt to load the gun. That way none of those powder, residual powder chunks or dirt or debris can fall against the inline, the face of the inline plug and cause ignition issues. That's one area that I would just consider as being a point. So what we've done here with shooting our groups today, you know, we got a couple of decent, somewhat decent groups at 100 yards and at 50 yards. And we cleaned in between every shot. We ran a brush through it to break up the loose powder, ran a patch, and then I'll show you, I've got an Otis bore snake here that we're gonna use. So I'll just show you the process that I did for that. So I've got a couple of rods here. This one's got a little, just kind of a wore out 20 gauge brush. Run it through there a couple of times and just clean some of that residual powder out of there. Okay. And I'm going to load it for you to show you the loading procedure. All right. Couple of passes with the brush. A patch. And guys, you do not want to get a patch stuck in this thing. All right. You can take your tube here, put it in the end of the moderator, and pass your bore snake through here. This is an Otis. It's a 50 caliber, okay? We're gonna pass it through, okay? Now for the loading procedure for this gun, I'm going kind of against what SilencerCo mentions in their manual and everything like that. We've made sure that our breech plug has got a little bit of grease, that we've got a clear hole through the middle of it. Replace the breech plug. All right, get her down, close the action. Put the loading tube in the end of the moderator before you turn the gun on its butt. Take your charge. In this case, a couple of white hots. All right, one white hot, 2 white hots, that makes 100 grains. 1 bore lock bullet, bullet starter, ramrod to clean her up and get her home. Put the gun back in this orientation, pull the loading tube. We're gonna grab a 209. So now, at this point, what you'll do is basically just push the striker mechanism forward until it locks. You have a cross bolt safety down here. Push it over to the left, red for dead, and the muzzle loader's ready to fire. Let's try our 200-yard shot again. I'm not gonna let it get me that easy. We haven't really figured out where this thing's hitting at 200 yet. We've done just some 150-yard work. And I would say it's definitely deer, minute of deer at 150, but 200, I'm not too certain I try to take a 200-yard shot with this thing just yet. All right, you ready? There we go, lower left corner at 200. Not bad. I mean, guys, the purpose of this video is we really just wanted to kind of showcase some of our findings with the Maxim 50. I know a lot of folks take pictures of these things and put them on the internet and everything like that, but I haven't really seen anybody take the time to really dial one of these in and kind of figure out what's what with these muzzle loaders yet. They do have their quirks, just like a lot of muzzle loaders do, and if I could offer any piece of advice to somebody, it's that muzzle loading is an art form that takes a little bit of time and practice to really find exactly what works for you as a person and what works for your particular gun. Just because my gun likes white hots doesn't mean that your gun will. Every muzzle loader is a little bit different in terms of what they like, and muzzle loading does give you some flexibility. So just because a pre-formed charge of white hots gives you 2 of these makes 100 grains, well, if you're using loose powder, well, I might be able to tweak that to 109 grains or 89 grains or 95 grains, or find the precise amount of powder that might find that sweet spot for that muzzle loader to get you just the right amount of accuracy that you want. You know, we went out on a hunt the other morning. We didn't really see much that morning. The same evening, went out and did some more hunting with my buddy Chad. He was able to get him a really nice deer. So check this out. We'll show you a little excerpt from that. Good shot. You got her, Chad. All right, dude, Maxim 50 doe. What do you think?
It's it put the smack down on her, that's for sure.
It did. Nice healthy doe. Man, she didn't go very far, did she?
No, she only went about 15, 20 feet.
That was a great shot, dude. That was a perfect humane shot you made on that doe.
It was hard to see through the scope. I was hoping I was going to be able to pull it off.
Yep. All right, so let's get back to the Maxim review. We might have some more deer hunting footage, but we just wanted to, you know, showcase this thing in its natural environment. All right, so you saw that was pretty cool there with the deer kill. He was really excited with that. We wanted to get some data with this thing to kind of know exactly what we're working with, and the gun provided a nice humane kill on the deer. And we were excited to kind of include that in this video. It's just a little excerpt as to the kind of things that we're getting out and really doing with this particular muzzle loader. Rick Ward and I will be going out here very soon and trying to do a little bit more hunting with this thing. You probably noticed in the other video and some of the B-roll in this video, we have Vortex PST on this gun you see here, this is a Leupold VX2 that's on it right now and a set of Weaver rings. One other thing I will mention about this, if you're going to use their base and everything, make sure you rock set the mess out of those screws. My particular gun came with the base already installed, and I was really frustrated because within the first 5 or 6 shots, the base started working loose, and I didn't figure it out for a good minute. And I went to pick the gun up, and I just happened to grab the scope and kind of twist a little bit, and sure enough, that base had worked loose. So guys, the minute you get your Maxim 50, if you're gonna buy one of these, make sure you pull those dang screws, degrease them, and rock set that base in there and torque it down to about 25 inch-pounds and be done with it, okay? Do not just use it as it comes out of the box. Pull that base and mount it properly, because my screws were not mounted properly and they worked out within the first 6 shots. I'm trying to save you guys some frustration. That's why I'm making this video for would-be owners of the Maxim 50 to kind of learn from some of my mistakes and some of the things that I learned the hard way with this particular muzzle loader. That would be one suggestion that I would give you. Now, the PST, you're probably wondering, all right, why did we pull the PST? I had to pull the PST because the windage adjustment started acting a little bit weird. We zeroed out the turrets on the Vortex PST, that particular optic, and they weren't really holding that great. And we had one get bumped, and it bumped our zero like a foot to the right, and it was really frustrating. So we just decided, you know what, that's not really a hunting type of optic anyway. It does have the large exposed target turrets, and leaves a little bit to be desired for a hunting optic. When you have a gun that's going to be getting bumped in and out of a deer stand, or rolling around in the woods, or rolling around in the back of a truck, you need something that has kind of low profile, set and forget type turrets. And we wanted something just a little bit more simple, so we decided to drop this little Louis on here just to give it a try, and so far it's been holding up pretty good. So that's just my bit of feedback there in the way of optics. We just really wanted to make this video kind of as a public service announcement kind of thing, because a lot of folks have been showing these Maxim 50s off on social media, but not a lot of people have really actually gone out and tried to do any real serious work with them. And we wanted to take the time to really give this the look that it deserves. Guys, when I learned that the Maxim 50 existed, I was a little bit excited at first, like, wow, this is really cool, because this is something that might take some of the modern shooters who maybe aren't into muzzle loaders and make them really like muzzle loaders. I mean, guys, this thing is reasonably quiet. I've been shooting this without hearing protection the entire time. The shot I just fired was shot number 91. That's a whole tray of empty 209s that I fired, every single one of these 209s through this gun. We have shot this thing a lot in an effort to collect data and to try to teach you guys a little bit of something about the Maxim 50 through our hard work and experience trying to figure out what is going on with this thing. It's reasonably quiet. It is a little bit front heavy. You know, obviously the moderator on there is going to give it a little bit more of a forward balance. It's going to favor the forward part of the gun. When I first heard about this gun, I was kind of excited because, you know, it is neat. But the purist in me, you know, I am a black powder aficionado. I love shooting black powder. So we really wanted to take the time to try to kind of figure this thing out, to know exactly what we could pass along to you guys in terms of valuable information that we feel would help you out. So people that might be on the fence about muzzle loading hunting, which in some states might only be a week. I mean, you're talking a very small amount of time where it's muzzle loaders only as opposed to other rifles. Now, some states have rules where you might only be able to use a muzzle loader for the entire hunting season. So it just depends on the individual state. But what excites me about this is it gets a lot of the younger shooters into the idea of hunting with a muzzle loader. Some of you guys might find, especially with the downrange energy that 350 grain bullet puts down there, it provides a very clean, humane kill, and it's a very, very clean kill. And a lot of folks might find that, man, this big bore hunting is pretty cool. You know, they might drop some of their small bore stuff and opt for hunting with, you know, maybe a 45-70 or something like that during rifle season, and then sticking with their 50 cal muzzle loader or whatever they're going to use for muzzle loading season. Or people might say, you know what, this is so much fun and it's such a challenge that I'm just going to hunt with this year round. So the reason I mention it is because I am a bit of a purist. You know, I like to hunt with traditional style muzzle loaders during muzzle loading season. To me, that is part of the charm of hunting with primitive weapons, is using a primitive weapon. And guys, the Maxim 50 is the furthest end of the spectrum you could possibly get away from a traditional muzzleloader. I mean, for one, it's an inline system, which is a much more modern system, much more reliable, uses these good hot 209 primers. You got basically modern powders that give you some really wicked foot-pounds of energy. You got a modern bullet design. Guys, this is as modern as it gets in the way of a muzzleloader. But my theory is, if it will get youngsters into shooting muzzleloaders, you know, you get a few kills under their belt with this when it comes to deer, and then down the road you go, hey Junior, check it out. This is a Hawkins style muzzleloader. Hey, this is an old front stuffer. Let's go kill one with a original type muzzleloader. Because to me, that's what really kind of honors the tradition of muzzleloading hunting, is by using some of the classics, some of the older guns. So I'm a little bit torn, and I was a little bit torn going into this review. But one thing I will say about the Maxim 50, it's a really cool muzzleloader. I like shooting it. It's very pleasing to the ear. It's not loud at all. It has wonderful downrange performance, as you saw in the video here. Accuracy is something that can be kind of worked on. Some of you guys might have a pet load in your favorite inline that you know shoots good, and every inline you put it in, guess what? Try your pet load out. I'm not saying you have to use what we're using, but one bit of advice I'll leave you with before we end this video is take the time to work up a good load and take the time to find out what works for you. Do not shoot this thing and sight it in 1 or 2 times and go, all right, time to go hunting. Spend some time behind the gun and learn the quirks about the gun so that you can be the most prepared and humane hunter that you possibly can be. I mean, let's face it, this type of gun, this muzzleloader, is a hunting implement. Most people that buy this are probably not going to buy it to just go out and plink and have fun. They're going to buy it as a tool to go hunt with. If you're going to go hunting with a muzzleloader, especially a muzzleloader, make sure that you are offering the most humane opportunity to harvest an animal that you possibly can. And the only way you're going to do that is to spend some time behind the gun and shoot it, get used to it, and truly understand what you're dealing with. So hopefully, guys, we hit on all the bases. There are a lot of things about this gun that we probably didn't talk about, but I talked about what I felt was the most crucial thing that I wanted to pass along to the end consumer. Because if you guys get one of these things, the last thing I'd want is for y'all to be mad or disappointed and feel like you got something that you didn't know what you were getting yourself into. So we felt that the points in this video that we described were important to mention, because I want to make sure that you understand that there's some little intricacies to a muzzleloader, and especially one like this with a moderator. And we really wanted to just make sure that you guys understood what you were getting yourselves into. I will say I do like it. It is cool. It's something that's going to stay a part of my muzzle loading arsenal from here on out. I'll probably use it every single year, but it's not going to replace the classics for me. It's something that is meant to augment your abilities in the woods when it comes to hunting, not replace traditional muzzle loaders. So in that vein, is it worth $1,000? I guess that's the other question. Well, you have to ask. I mean, a big bore suppressor might cost $600 to $700, maybe $800, and then you got a tax stamp. Guys, this doesn't have a tax stamp. Okay, so that's one of those things, you're automatically saving $200 right out the door. And this thing will ship to your straight to your front door in like 41 or 42 states, I think now. Some states initially kind of like scoffed at it and immediately like went, took SilencerCo to court over this crap and everything. So of course your usual suspects in terms of different states have already, said it's a no-no. But in theory, it is a 50-state legal muzzleloader that can ship straight to your door in any state. But it is what it is. Guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. I have really enjoyed shooting the Maxim 50. It is a wonderful muzzleloader. It has its place in the arsenal of muzzleloader enthusiasts and hunters. And I think it's a really cool, smart move on SilencerCo's part. And I think that it has its place. And guys, I hope that you learned something in today's video. And if you are, maybe you already own one of these, or maybe you're looking to own one, I hope that maybe some of my points came across in a way that can help you avoid frustration and cost and time at the range, and hopefully get right down to brass tacks and do what you need to do behind this gun at the range. So thank you so much for watching today's video. We'll see you in the woods.